Hello and welcome to this session. Excuse the rustling in the background. This particular episode of Brochure Wednesday on JCT's Fascinating Hobbies. And today we're going to be looking at the Fiat Marea and the Fiat Marea weekend. There's if you open it out, that's the full A3 spread of the actual brochure itself. And this brochure dates from, let's have a look, see if we can find it in the small print on there. So $7.99, so 7/99, which is obviously July 1999, and it was printed in Italy at Officine Grafici Caurini, Bologna. So very Italian, a bit like the car actually. So if you recognise the front end, then you're doing pretty well, because the front end, and in fact a lot of the car itself, was shared with the smaller Brava and Bravo models. I think the Brava was the 3-door and the Bravo was the 4-door or 5-door hatchback version. The Marea itself came in saloon and estate versions, and it was just sort of aimed really at the class above. So it was sort of aimed, I guess, at the larger family and the entry-level executive market, especially with some of the engine options that you had. One thing I've always found with Fiats is they have fantastic showroom appeal. So the actual cars themselves, the way they look, the sort of features that they offer really draw you into the showroom. And certainly if you're going to be changing the car after the first few years, that's absolutely perfect. But little niggly things seem to sort of creep in as they age, and they just become sort of harder to maintain and inevitably harder to get parts for. It's just little things don't sort of really last as long as other manufacturers. Exhausts is a big one. They don't seem to sort of last as long. Wheels become, especially alloy wheels, become sort of quite tarnished fairly quickly. After sort of about 4 or 5 years, they do look sort of quite shabby. But I guess it's all down to the care of the vehicle as well. If you look after it, it'll sort of tend to last. But it's just sort of silly little things don't last as long as they should. You know, sort of detailed trim elements, etc. Rust-wise, they are a lot better than they used to be, but they're certainly with the Punto of this generation. There were a lot of problems with, or certainly the Punto that sort of came out around, was it around 2000 or so? There was a lot of problems with rust on those, certainly floor pan, roof rust, and other areas that tended to go. It was one of those sort of weird issues that it was dependent on the factory they were built in and also the colour that they were painted. Some colours were worse than others. This one particular factory was worse than the other factory. Same scenario with the Alfa Romeo 156 of the era. That would either be reasonably okay or it would be a shocking disaster. Certainly underneath floor pans, sort of around the rear of the floor pan. Same with the Alfa 147 as well. Cars, again, fantastic showroom appeal, fantastic cars to drive, but they just don't seem to have the longevity, which is probably why there aren't that many left, unfortunately. The Marea itself was never really that popular because Fiat have always sort of been seen as a producer of excellent, drivable, fun, quirky small cars, and that really is where their core market is. Larger vehicles such as this, they sort of didn't really sell very well, so to find a Marea weekend, which is Fiat parlance for estate, such as the old sort of Tempra weekend, Regatta weekend before it, to find a Marea weekend is quite a find indeed. You don't really see them. I suppose it's direct replacement now. I think they do the current Tipo in estate form, so there is sort of almost a direct descendant of this. I think there was also the Stilo estate as well, so really that sort of carried on the line of larger Fiat estates that didn't really seem to sell very well. The interior itself does look quite inviting. The dashboard does seem to have been taken out of the Bravo models with the radio, which was unique at the time for being anti-theft. This was a big thing in the late 90s. Certainly mid to late 90s, more and more manufacturers were making these inbuilt radio cassette units, which were unique to the vehicle that they were destined for. It meant that it was an instant winner when it came to anti-theft. But what it did mean was you couldn't easily install your own radio cassette or CD unit, because certainly on designs, certainly on Vauxhalls, for example, and Vauxhalls and Opals, the actual radio cassette and associated display made up part of, certainly on the Vectra B, made up part of the trip computer, and also other such displays such as outside temperature, time, etc., and also made up the core radio display. However, one bonus there was if you did decide to put in your own radio cassette unit, the display would continue to function, but would just be limited to trip computer and clock and outside temperature functions. On these, I think these were literally just sort of built into the dash. So if you did replace these, you could get a surround and put your own standard DIN size unit in there. The front itself, actually behind it, you actually had just a standard DIN size unit, but it certainly was a way a lot of manufacturers were going at this particular time. It was the thing to be seen to be doing. Obviously more secure, and other sort of factors like that. I think the biggest one was just generally being more secure. A nice feature is obviously multiple headrests. All of them look adjustable as well. Certainly sort of a bonus for the rear seat passengers, especially the middle one there. Got a centre armrest to pull out there, which is quite nice. Also, this was a feature you didn't see on many cars of this era, but was becoming really popular. A proper shoulder belt with lap belt for the rear passenger, the rear central passenger. The outside ones would always get proper inertia reel belts, and the middle passenger would always just have a lap belt, which didn't give them as much support or safety as a full 3-point belt such as that. Obviously advancements in sort of seat technology meant that the inertia reel mechanism could be put into the seat back, and obviously you've got these heavy duty locking mechanisms there, so in the event of an accident, obviously you'd be putting a lot of force on that sort of seat back itself, but obviously these locking mechanisms would keep it in place. And you know, sort of advancements like that in safety were, little details like this were selling points. If you went into a Fiat showroom and you were looking for a family car and you say compared this to a comparable model that didn't have this, you might be won over by that, especially if you regularly carry 3 people in the back, be it children or adults. Other nice features, they did come with a huge range of engines actually. You had, I think this would have been a 1.6, 1.8 and 2 litre. So the 1.6, 100 brake horsepower, 16 valve. The 1.8, 115 brake horsepower. Actually, these are PS ratings, I think. Or are they? No, they're not. So they were just rounded down or up to the nearest number. So 100, so 103 brake horsepower 1.6, 113 brake horsepower 1.8, and the interesting engine in the range, which I've got to be honest would be the one I would have gone for, was the 5-cylinder 2 litre with 155 brake horsepower. Also saw service in the Fiat Coupe, where it was available in normally aspirated and turbocharged forms, and I did meet someone once who actually owned a Marea estate that he had put the turbo unit from a Fiat Coupe into, and that made for quite a, I guess they call it a sleeper. It would sort of turn a few heads and surprise a few people in the way that it accelerated. The Fiat Coupe, I think, was one of the last vehicles based on the old Fiat Tipo platform. I'm not sure what these were based on. I'm not sure if they were based on the same platform or not, or if they were a newer generation. But you did have a range of engines. The JTD 130 was, I think, a 5-cylinder diesel. The 105, I think, was a 1.9 litre unit. The JTD 130 was, I think, a 10-valve overhead cam 5-cylinder. JTD 8-valve overhead cam 1.9, if I remember rightly. But those figures for diesels at the time, especially with the torque that they developed, really did make them quite impressive units, especially that 130. Fiat also used that particular diesel engine in other vehicles in the range across both Lancia, Dacia, and also Alfa Romeo ranges as well. So they weren't just limited to Fiat models. So there was obviously, they were obviously used across the range. What's also quite nice is because it's an Italian firm, and Italians do like their engines, which is one real selling point for this range. They go into quite a bit of detail in the range of engines that were available, from the 103 brake horsepower 16 valve, I think that would be the 1.8, 1747cc, 1581c for the 5-cylinder 2 litre, and 1910cc, which if you know your Fiat engines, that's a figure that will be very familiar to you. The 1910cc unit, I think it's the same basic block that was used by a number of manufacturers, actually. Certainly when GM got involved with Fiat, that engine saw service, obviously in modified form, in a lot of GM products: Vauxhalls, Opels, Saabs, Cadillacs, actually, because the Cadillac BLS obviously had the 1.9 TID unit, which is basically a 1.9 CDTI. Also grew to have twin turbochargers on certain Fiat and GM models. So that engine really did see a lot of service, and I think the current 2 litre, I'm not sure if it's still current, but the 2 litre version was pretty much the same engine. So a sturdy engine that saw service in a large number of different vehicles in the 75 brake horsepower form. They got it there, sturdy and economical, and it was a sturdy and economical engine which would just run and run and run if serviced correctly. The added complexity came when you slapped on another cylinder. So this was a 2.4 litre engine, and I think it basically was a 5-cylinder version of that 4-cylinder 1910cc unit. Developed 130 brake horsepower here. It also saw service in the Alfa 156. I think it was also in the Lancia Kappa at the time, which we didn't get in the UK, unfortunately. Lancia pulled out of the UK in the early 90s. Annoyingly, just before they released the latest generation Delta, which was apparently a fantastic car. But unfortunately, that was it for Lancia UK until there was a brief period in the late noughties, well, the late 2000s, when Chrysler took over the Fiat group. They did actually have a number of rebadged Lancias, which were basically badged up as Chryslers for the UK. So you had the Chrysler Delta, the Chrysler Ypsilon, but anybody that knew they were buying Lancia. So it was quite nice to actually have the mark come over, even if it was badged up as a Chrysler. It was also quite nice that the Chrysler 300C was badged up as the Lancia Tamer. So it was quite nice again. It's going to sound really bad. It was pleasant to see a return of that name. So really, some sort of very nice cars have been produced by Fiat. As I say, the problem is when they sort of get to a few years old. That's generally when you're sort of coming to change them, but it's just sort of detail things don't last really as long as they should. But you did get, certainly for here, you got a lot of car for your money, especially when you look at all of the features that you got. Certainly on just the SX model, you got auto air conditioning with pollen filter, power steering, ABS, body colour bumpers, and that was on your base spec model. You also got on the Marea Weekend, you had roof bars, rear wash wipe, tailgate release combined with a centralised lock-in, luggage cover, and an upholstered luggage compartment. It's all good stuff. You also got a nice range of colours as well. That green, an unusual choice for a larger car, but I've got to admit, I like that colour. Same with that gold as well, real sort of fetching range of colours. And that's one thing that Fiat have always seemed to have done really well, is the range of colours that they produce their cars in. I mean, if you cast your mind back to in the UK market, when we got the Strada back in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, they came in a fantastic range of colours, sort of like a blue, orange, green, real sort of stand out, vivid colours. And it was always sort of nice to see a Strada when I was younger, because they didn't look like anything else. They had quirky door handles, they looked quirky at the front, quirky at the back. The facelifted Strada looked nowhere near as good in my view, but the pre-facelift sort of Phase 1 Strada looked fantastic. Such a fun looking car, but the problem is rust. Rust got to them, and that was it. They just sort of number of survivors just instantly dropped off a cliff almost overnight at some point in the 90s, which was a shame. It was that sort of thing. They got to a few years old, people moved on, they got newer cars, they sort of moved up to the next available car at the time. Certainly one car that lasted a lot better than the Strada was its immediate replacement, the Fiat Tipo. That really did last. It was galvanised for starters, and survival rates on those were pretty good up until the mid-2000s, when again survivors of those dropped off a cliff, but they dropped off a cliff, I'd say, far slower than the Strada. What's nice is you can still find 1-2 owner examples of Stradas, especially the nicer versions like the Abarths, the 85s, etc. So yeah, they haven't all gone, but there aren't as many left. I think on the continent there's quite a few Ritmos still sort of doing in daily service, certainly in sort of warmer climates, southern Italy, Spain, etc. The ELX, that's your next level up. You could actually get the 155 engine in the ELX trim. You could also get the Marea Weekend in ELX as well. That was really sort of cosmetic changes. You did have better headlights. You got body coloured, electrically heated door mirrors, a dashboard check panel, which is sort of a very Fiat thing, rear courtesy lights, and a range of options. 15-inch wheels with alloy wheels only on the 2-litre version. The HLX, that was your sort of top of the range option. Quite a nice dashboard as well. Nice instrumentation, quite quirky as well, the sort of style of the dials that they had. You had central console and illumination, which I think you got on all versions actually. Top of the range stereo radio cassette with remote control steering column controls, etc. Or steering wheel control, sorry. Remote central lock-in and alarm, luxury velour upholstery and carpets, electric height adjustment on the driver's seat and alloy wheels. Leather covered steering wheel, handbrake grip and gear knob lever except on the JTD 130 for some reason, and Gator. Electric rear windows, headlamp washers. So that really was your top of the range option there. Now we got onto the weekend side of things. In retrospect, quite a nice looking car. Sort of touches of the Laguna about it. Laguna Phase 1 in Laguna 1 or whatever you want to call it, in the rear lights, but unique in its own right, and actually I'd say better looking than the Laguna. Oh, this is nice. You could actually, if you wanted, spec some fake wood trim or wood trim, whatever you want to call it, for your centre console and oddments tray there, which is pleasant. Get yourself some side skirts and spoilers, alloy wheels, such as those. Dog guard there for your Dalmatian, which is not an optional extra. Quite a cool roof spoiler there, which is quite fun. Headlamp protectors, car mats, lowered suspension kits, bike racks, seat covers. You name it, you could probably get it if you wanted. So here we got the aerodynamic ski box, the rear spoiler, the elegant wood veneer, very elegant. I wonder how many people actually spec'd that. I wonder if anyone actually spec'd it. I wonder if somebody went into Fiat and goes, oh, I really like the look of that elegant wood veneer. Throw that into my Marea, please. I would so love to have it. It would be great. They did come with a reasonable warranty package for the time. 12-month unlimited mileage mechanical warranty. The Mastercare programme, where you could obtain further peace of mind by purchasing an additional 12, 24 or 36 or 48-month mechanical warranty called Mastercare. That's pretty good. 8-year anti-perforation warranty. That was one thing that Fiat did do well, was anti-perforation warranties, especially after the dissolving Fiats of the 70s and early 80s. 3-year paintwork warranty, which is pretty good. You could also get Fiat AA assurance. You could also get Fiat insurance. A range of finance plans, 12 months repairs and parts guarantee, fixed service costs, and also a Motability program as well. So you could get one through the Motability program, which was quite nice. But yeah, this was the thing. Certainly, Fiat dealers, you would either get a really good Fiat dealer or a not very good Fiat dealer. That was one thing that they seemed to suffer in the late 90s, was an inconsistency of service across the sort of the dealers that they had in the UK. I would like to think that things are a lot better now, but that certainly was one of the things that you read up a lot about. It was the thing with sort of Alfa Romeo franchises. They were usually on the side of Fiat dealers, and you either got an Alfa Romeo franchise that knew the product inside out, was very enthusiastic, or an Alfa Romeo franchise that existed because they knew they had to exist in order to keep the money-making Fiat side of things. And service may not have been as good as it should have been, perhaps, let's say. Moving on to the specifications, so I'll just leave that open there for a little moment. That's interesting. On the base 100 model, you didn't have ventilated front discs. You had ventilated discs on the 1.6 automatic, the 1.8, the 2 litre. Actually, you had bigger brakes on the 2 litre, and yeah, you had bigger brakes on the 5-cylinder versions. What did you have on the back? I guess T is, I don't know if that means drum, perhaps. Rear drums, 2 litres. Rear drums on everything else. Rear discs, 240mm discs on the 5-cylinder versions, but not anything else by the looks of it. That's interesting. Ah, yes, that's the difference. So on the TD75, it was an indirect injection with turbocharger. However, the same engine, or same basic engine, had direct injection, turbo and intercooler, common rail electronic engine control system. So that was one of the early common rail units. Same with this 130 model. And that's obviously where the power came from, especially the direct injection, common rail, etc. Far higher pressure, direct injection produces, you know, sort of more bhp, more torque, etc. So yeah, sort of quite a difference. Quite a difference in sort of drivability. This would have been worlds away from that. You know, even though it's not that many brake horsepower more, well, actually it's about 25, 30 more actually. That is quite a difference. The two would have been worlds apart in drivability. The 5-cylinder, well, I seem to remember they were pretty good actually, certainly performance-wise, drivability-wise as well. This was sort of like the first sort of generation of cars where the diesels were becoming real sort of performance machines. Not quite outstripping the petrols in the brake horsepower stakes, but getting worryingly close. And certainly by the mid 2000s, you had diesels that were more powerful than the petrol equivalents, and actually were the preferred way to go, and seen as sort of the more premium engine choice as well. It seems to be going the other way since Dieselgate with Volkswagen and other companies in the VAG group and other companies in general. But there was a time, certainly in the late 90s, early 2000s, early 2010s, etc., where going diesel was sort of the premium route to actually go. Obviously, when you got up to sort of the larger models, BMW 7 Series, etc., the petrols were still the premium way to go. The diesels were just seen as sort of like an entry level for the sort of fleet market. So if you were going to go for something special, you would have gone for a petrol. But VW did actually do a really good job of making diesel engines for premium models that you wanted to buy, such as the V10 unit that you saw in the Touareg and the Phaeton, the V12 TDI that you saw in the Audi Q7, so other V8 diesels that they did. You know, a lot of manufacturers really sort of bought into it. Onto the bit I like, trims and colours. So that lichen green was the one I liked. That was quite a nice colour. Dark green was nice. Blue Lord, that's an interesting name for a colour. Blue Way, Azure Blue, Golden Grey, interesting. Steel Grey, Bronze, that's quite nice. Silk Black, also quite pleasant. Or you got Enamel Red or White. Oh, Sunset Red, that was sort of like that orangey red that they did. Trim wise, red cloth, green cloth, blue velour. Green was actually an interesting choice. You didn't really see many green interiors, especially with that Oceano green velour, Oceano blue velour, red velour, or grey leather. So what could I get my HLX with? I could get my HLX in... Could I get it in that green lichen green? Oh, I can't get it in lichen green. I could get it in emerald green. Oh no, sorry, hang on a minute, that's the velour. So I could get lichen green with green velour, or I could get it with the grey leather. See, I think thing is, I like that green velour. I would probably have the HLX, probably the HLX 2 litre weekend, practicality reasons, in lichen green with green velour. Yep, there we go. I'm going to go to the Fiat dealer on Monday and get that ordered in. I might have to invent a time machine to do so. Anyway, that was just me waffling on for nearly 30 minutes about a Fiat brochure for a car that most people have forgotten. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time on Brochure Review Wednesday. Thanks for watching.